I was supposed to arrive at the courthouse in silence. At least that was what my daughter-in-law believed. She was certain I would be taken to a psychiatric hospital before I had the chance to speak. So when the courtroom doors opened and I walked in, standing straight, fully alert, holding a stack of documents she never knew existed, Victoria froze. She shot to her feet, her face turning pale, stepping back as if she had seen a ghost. "No, no way! How are you here?" I looked straight into her eyes. The entire courtroom went silent. Victoria had no idea that only a few days earlier, I had done something she could never have imagined in her entire life. Something powerful enough to destroy her entire plan to have me committed. Something that turned the court around and made her the one under investigation. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment saying what time it is where you are. My name is Martha. This year I turned 72, an age when many people choose to rest, slow down, and enjoy what little peace remains in life. But for me, life still moves at the familiar pace of the dairy farm, nearly 30 miles outside Sheridan. Every morning, I rise before the sun, pull on my worn cardigan, step into the misty yard, and listen to the familiar calls of the cows from the barn. Those sounds that once felt like responsibility have become the only thing that makes me feel useful. My husband George and I built this farm from nothing. We met in Casper in the summer of 1970, when I was a 20-year-old girl looking for a part-time job in a general store. George was tall with gentle gray eyes and a warm voice. He told me he was saving every penny to buy a piece of land in the northern prairie to raise his own dairy herd. I thought he was joking until the day he actually bought that first plot of land and asked me to marry him. I followed him to this windswept place and began married life in a wooden house only a little bigger than the shed we have now. We worked tirelessly for years, each of us taking on every job we could, tending cows, milking them, caring for the fields, and saving every dollar to expand the farm. We lacked everything: money, workers, machines. But we had each other. And we had Thomas, the only child I carried through a winter so cold, the water in the trough froze solid in a few hours. Thomas grew up among grasslands, the smell of hay, and the sound of cows calling for their calves. He was quick and curious, always running after his father to learn how to fix the barn, cut hay, and tie rope. I always believed he would one day take over the farm and live a simple but fulfilling life like his father. I spent my entire life saving for him, from those first small milk deliveries that brought in a few dozen dollars to the more profitable dairy seasons. Everything was saved for a future I thought he would treasure. But life never follows the path we imagine. When Thomas left for college, I hugged him tightly and told him that no matter where he went, the farm would always be home. But he did not return the way I expected. Thomas liked city life, wide streets, bars, office jobs, new friends. I respected his choices and told myself he would find what made him happy. Then he brought home Victoria, a beautiful, smart, quick young woman from Salt Lake City. The first time we met, I felt a distance I could not describe. Victoria had the manner of someone used to clean, orderly neighborhoods with white fences and trimmed rose gardens. She was polite and kind, yet her eyes always seemed to slide past me as if I were part of the scenery. interesting enough to glance at, but not important to remember. I still tried to love her as a daughter. I had once been a young woman walking into my husband's family home, unsure and nervous. I took Victoria around the farm, showed her how to feed the cows, how to recognize the sick ones, how to prepare the milking area in the morning. She smiled softly, but the smile never reached her eyes. After George died last year, taken from me by a sudden heart attack in just a few minutes, Thomas and Victoria came home even less often. I did not blame them. Young people are busy. Life pulls them in many directions. But I never imagined that distance would turn into something I could never fathom. That afternoon, I woke up from a short nap. When I pulled the curtain aside, I saw Thomas's truck turning onto the dirt road leading to the farm. Dust rose so thick it blurred the view. I felt a rush of joy. He came home so rarely. I thought maybe he missed my apple pie. I hurried onto the porch and called out his name. Warmth spread in my chest when I saw him step out of the truck, with Victoria walking around the back with her handbag. I smiled and waved, but the warmth faded instantly when I saw Victoria's eyes. Cold. So cold, it made me shiver. Thomas, Victoria, I did not know you were coming, I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. Thomas gave a strained smile. Mom, we need to talk. I had not even asked what was wrong when Victoria stepped onto the porch, tapping her shoes against the wood as if she refused to let dirt touch them. Her voice was flat and stiff. Martha, this is important. You need to sit down. I froze for a second. She had never called me mom or mother-in-law, but hearing her say Martha felt painfully distant. I led them into the kitchen that always smelled of coffee and butter. I poured water, but Victoria did not drink. She set her handbag on the table, unzipped it, and took out a stack of documents. A sense of dread tightened in my chest, but I did not expect anything this cruel. Martha, Victoria began, we have discussed everything carefully. This farm is too large and too dangerous for you to live on alone. You are no longer mentally stable enough to care for yourself. I froze. What do you mean? I work every day. I still... Victoria cut me off, her voice sharp as a blade. We have evidence. You forgot to lock the cowshed twice last month. You let milk overflow from the machine, and the neighbors say they hear you talking to people who are no longer alive. I went numb. I did talk to George, not like a mad woman, just quiet murmurs when I missed him. His voice, his warmth. Anyone who has lost a husband has done the same. But Victoria turned everything into symptoms of illness. Thomas lowered his head. Victoria is right, Mom. I think this is the best solution for you. Solution for what? I asked, my voice trembling. Victoria pulled the documents closer. We have completed the paperwork. Wind River Psychiatric Hospital is accepting new patients. You only need to sign. They will take better care of you than we can. I felt the blood drain from my body. A psychiatric hospital. I let out a laugh, broken and painful. You think I am insane. I am just old, not insane. Your refusal to recognize your condition is one of the symptoms, Victoria said without a hint of emotion. Thomas swallowed hard and reached for my hand. Mom, please, do not make this harder. We just want what is good. I pulled my hand away. What is good for who? For me or for this farm? At that moment, Victoria's eyes flashed, quick, sharp, dangerous, like a blade catching the light. And I understood. I understood everything. "This farm," I said slowly, "is the life work of your father and me. It is not for sale. It is not for anyone to take." Victoria leaned closer, her smile thin as a thread. "We do not want to take anything, but Thomas is the only son. Sooner or later, whether you want it or not, this property will be ours. It is better to plan early." My ears rang. My daughter-in-law, the woman I once thought was simply distant, was now calculating my fate the way one calculates the price of a dairy cow. I stood up, bracing myself on the table. Thomas tried to rise, but Victoria pulled him back. "Let her be," she whispered. I still heard it. "Once she signs the admission papers, everything will be in our hands." It felt as if someone had struck me in the chest. My daughter-in-law planned to sell the farm, to sell my entire life, to sell the land where George rests on the hill behind the pasture. And Thomas, my son, sat silently and let her do it. In that moment, something cracked inside me. Not just trust. It was the maternal love I had carried for more than 40 years. "You truly want to send me to a psychiatric hospital?" I asked Thomas. My voice was rough. Thomas did not answer. His silence spoke louder than words. I trembled, not from fear, but from the feeling of being uprooted from my own life, like an old tree torn from the soil it has clung to forever. Victoria pushed the documents toward me. "Sign them. The sooner, the better." I looked down at the lines that read, "Mental health evaluation and temporary transfer of asset management." The black letters looked like leeches clinging to my destiny. "You want to send me away so you can sell the farm, do you not?" I asked, my eyes burning. Victoria smiled, no longer bothering to hide anything. "You are smarter than I thought." Thomas sighed and covered his face, but he did nothing to protect me. That was when I understood. I had lost my son long ago. Not today, but the day he left the farm, the day he walked away from the hard but honest life his father and I built, the day he chose Victoria's easy words over the truth of my love. I took my hands off the documents. "You want me to sign? I need time." Victoria shrugged. 3 days. If you do not sign, we will request a high-risk patient hold. Then you will not need to sign anything." Thomas turned away, unable to meet my eyes. Victoria rose, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeve like she had finished a simple chore. Before stepping outside, she turned back. Her voice was so cold, I felt the kitchen freeze with it. "You need to understand that since George passed away, you are no longer competent to run this place, and there is always someone ready to take your place." The door closed behind them. The house fell silent again. Only the clock ticked, counting down the time I had left on the land I had built with my own hands. I collapsed into the chair. No tears came. The pain was too large for crying. I looked out the window and saw the wind move through the grasslands, the cows grazing peacefully, the red dirt road stretching to the horizon. Everything looked the same. Only I and my family were no longer what we once were. That night, I did not light the fireplace. An early fall evening in Wyoming should have needed warmth, but I was cold in a way no fire could fix. I sat at the wooden table George had built with his own hands years ago. the table that had witnessed every meal, every laugh, every family story. Tonight, it witnessed something else. The collapse of what I once believed was unbreakable. I tried to gather reasons to calm myself, but my mind kept circling one truth. Thomas had taken Victoria's side. The pain made me feel like a stranger in my own home. I sat there for hours, no lamps on, no dinner, no sound except my own breathing. When the clock struck 9, I finally realized night had settled in completely. Outside the window, the cows still stood quietly in the dark, waiting for their evening hay like they always did. I tried to stand, and pain shot through my knees. The changing weather had been wearing my body down these past months, but I had never once thought of myself as useless. I grabbed my coat and went out to the barn to finish my chores. It was a habit I had never abandoned since I was young. No matter how tired I was, the cows needed care. But as soon as I pushed the barn door open, I saw a figure standing in the moonlight. I gasped. It was my neighbor, Ruth. "Martha." I heard something, she whispered. A knot formed in my throat. "What did they tell you?" "Thomas came to my house earlier. He said you were showing signs of confusion. He said you talked to the dead, let the cows out, ruin milk." "Martha, I know you are not like that, but when young people keep repeating something, folks start believing." I stayed still. The Wyoming cold touched my skin, but it was nothing compared to the humiliation spreading from my back to my heart. I thanked Ruth and returned to the house. The door closed behind me, like a blade cutting away my last hope that the neighbors would stay out of this. The next morning, at exactly 8, a silver pickup drove into the yard. I was raking hay when I recognized the woman stepping out of the truck. A social worker. Someone I had never met but had heard about. She approached with a professional smile, holding a file folder. "Mrs. Martha, I am Angela from Sheridan County Community Services. I was sent to assess your psychological condition and your ability to care for yourself." I tightened my grip on the rake. "Assess what, exactly?" "Your family submitted a report stating you are showing signs of delusion, cognitive decline, and unsafe, independent living." The air left my chest like a punch. Those were Thomas and Victoria's exact words from yesterday. Angela looked around, her eyes evaluating every part of the life I had built with so much effort. "You live here alone." "I have lived here alone for a year, since my husband passed." "Do you forget things? Do you ever burn milk, leave doors unlocked?" Every question felt like a knife. I answered them one by one, as calmly as I could. But I could see doubt in her eyes. When someone has fed her a particular story, she will only look for evidence to support it. "When do you talk to the deceased?" Angela asked, right as we walked by the cows. I stopped. "I do not talk to the dead. I miss my husband." When a woman lives alone long enough, sometimes she speaks a few words just to feel less empty. That is not an illness. Angela nodded, but her expression stayed flat. She wrote something down. My chest tightened again. At the end of the evaluation, she said, "I will send my report to the court. We will reach out if we need anything further." Then she left, leaving me standing in the yard like someone who had just had her dignity stripped away. That afternoon, Victoria called. I nearly ignored the call, But I answered. I was still Thomas's mother. I wanted to understand at least something. Her voice came through smooth, sweet, in a false way. Martha, the social worker came today, right? You must be stressed. But this is an important step to ensure your safety. My voice was cold. What do you want from me? We want you to be safe, Victoria emphasized. Or do you want the farm in your hands? Silence for a moment. Then Victoria laughed, soft, brief, but sharp enough to cut. Martha, you should let go. You are not young enough to run a farm. We can sell it for a good price and move to the city. That is Thomas's future. You should not stand in the way. In the way, I repeated, my voice cracking. You understand. A gentle phrase, but a blade driven straight into a mother's heart. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Victoria, I gave my entire life to this farm. It is not for sale. Older people sometimes do not know what is best for them, but we know. You should trust us. Why should I trust you? This time, Victoria did not bother to hide anything. You do not have a choice. Elderly individuals cannot make decisions about property if their minds are unstable. It felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I am perfectly sane, I said. Victoria answered lightly, like a cold breeze. No one will believe you. Then she hung up. No goodbye. No respect. Nothing. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the old bed, staring at the wooden ceiling where George and I once told each other stories in the dark. George used to say, Martha, if I go first, you must stay strong. This farm is part of your soul. I thought I could be strong, but now I trembled like a child. Humiliation does not come from insults. It comes from being misjudged, from being dismissed, from having your sanity twisted for someone else's gain, from the son you raised with your whole life choosing not to stand by you. And then, in the middle of the night, I heard a sound behind the house. I stepped onto the porch, squinting toward the barn. A flashlight flickered. 2 figures. I narrowed my eyes. Victoria's voice drifted through the quiet Wyoming night, clear and sharp. Thomas, you need to sign the asset reassignment papers. Your mother will not resist for long. My heart stopped. Victoria continued. The more evidence we create, the sooner the hospital will take her. Then the farm is ours. Thomas did not answer, but he did not disagree either. I gripped the porch railing. My hands were wrinkled, weak, old, but my heart had never hurt like this. And in that moment, in the freezing Wyoming night, facing the betrayal of the very people I loved, I understood something. If I did not stand up for myself, no one else would. The humiliation had done its work. It pushed me to the edge, where I finally saw that I had to save myself. I stood on the porch for a long time that night, long after the flashlight near the barn disappeared, and Thomas and Victoria walked toward the guest house at the far end of the farm. The wind swept through my coat, cold enough to sting my skin, but inside my chest burned a different kind of fire, hot, raw, painful, but clear. I once believed that losing George was the greatest pain of my life. I thought nothing else could break my heart again. But I was wrong. My son, the boy who once ran through hayfields with muddy boots, who clung to my dress when storms rolled in, was now standing with the woman trying to throw me into a psychiatric hospital to take this place from me. My legs weakened, and I had to grip the railing to keep myself steady. But something inside me shifted. A crack closed, a tether snapped. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I understood. From now on, I could not rely on him. If I wanted to keep living, if I wanted to protect what remained of my life, I would have to stand alone. I went back inside and sat at the old wooden kitchen table. A habit from 20 years ago resurfaced. Whenever something big happened, I always made a pot of hot tea. But tonight, the water boiled while my hands trembled so badly, the cup overflowed. My hands were no longer young or strong, but my mind had never been clearer. What should I do? I had 3 days before Victoria filed for a psychiatric hold. 3 days to pull myself out of the trap my daughter-in-law had dug. I inhaled deeply and closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I could hear George's voice as clearly as if he stood beside me. "You are stronger than you think, Martha. Do not let anyone decide your life for you." I opened my eyes, and in that moment, I knew I would fight. The next morning, the Wyoming sky was gray, heavy clouds rolling across a bitter wind. But my mind felt sharp. I rose at 5, lit the fireplace, and made breakfast as usual. Not to serve anyone, but to remind myself that I still controlled my life. At 6, Thomas walked into the kitchen. His eyes were red, maybe from lack of sleep, maybe from the conversation he had with Victoria the night before. I set a plate of eggs and toast in front of him, but he did not touch it. "Mom." His voice was rough. I did not look up. "Yes. Can you think over what we said? Victoria only wants what is best for you. She is afraid you cannot live alone anymore." I put the pan down and turned toward him. "Thomas, do you see me as confused?" He looked away. "Have you ever seen me do anything unsafe?" Silence again. "Then why are you putting me in a psychiatric hospital?" Thomas lowered his head. "We just want you to be cared for." I let out a weary laugh. "Cared for? Or cleared out so you can take the farm?" Victoria only said, "You do whatever Victoria says." I cut in. "Thomas, I have lived here 52 years. I do not need anyone telling me how." Thomas bit his lip. "Mom, you do not understand. She only wants what is best for you. I understand. But what is best for you does not mean destroying me." He shot to his feet. "I am not destroying you. Victoria is not destroying you. This is just necessary." Necessary for who? The question hung in the air like a blade. He had no answer. And silence was the cruelest answer of all. I pushed my chair back and stood straight. "From now on, you and Victoria will stay in the guest house. Do not enter this house unless invited." Thomas stared at me. "You are kicking me out?" "No. I am setting a boundary because the moment you signed those hospital papers, you stopped standing on my side." He opened his mouth, then shut it. He turned and walked out. The door closed. The lock clicked behind him. It was the first time in my life I locked a door against my own son. Once I was sure he was gone. I went to the bedroom and took out a small wooden box. George had kept important documents in it. I knew what was inside: land papers, the will, the farm ownership documents. I opened it. The will was still there, wrapped in an old navy cloth. I unfolded it and read. Then I froze. George had written, "The farm belongs to my wife Martha for as long as she lives. Thomas will inherit only if he cares for his mother and does not force her to give up the farm." I exhaled sharply, my whole body trembling. George had known. He had anticipated this. He had protected me long before any of this happened. My eyes stung, but these were not tears of pain. They were tears of clarity. I gathered the will, the land deeds, the bank records, and put them into my old leather bag. I knew exactly where I had to go. Around 9, I drove toward Sheridan. The 30-mile road wound through bare hills and open grasslands. The wind cut through the cracked window, but I did not close it. I needed that cold to remind myself I was still fully aware. I parked in front of Attorney Jackson Myers's office, a tall, thin man with sharp eyes. I had met him a few times during the farm expansion paperwork. When I finished telling him everything, he did not interrupt once. His eyes grew darker. "Martha," he said, "attempting to admit a competent adult into a psychiatric facility to take their property is fraud, asset seizure, and elder abuse. You have enough grounds to protect yourself." I gripped my bag tightly. "But they will go through with it, Jackson. Victoria will not stop." "Then you must get ahead of them." He pulled out a set of papers. "This is a petition to have the court confirm your full mental competence. If you file this before they request a psychiatric hold, you will take the initiative." I stared at the documents, my hands shaking. "And there is more," he continued. "George's will is legally strong. If Thomas and his wife attempt to take the farm, they will lose their right to inherit." I inhaled deeply as a decision crystallized. "Jackson," I said, my voice firmer than I believed it could still be, "file everything needed to have the court declare me fully competent." He nodded. "And what else?" he asked. I looked at him with an expression I had not seen in my own reflection for years. "Prepare a restraining order. If they want this farm, they will have to go through the law, and through me." Jackson's smile was small but full of respect. "Martha, you are not just defending yourself. You are reclaiming your life." I returned to the farm at sunset. The golden light washed over the dry fields and made the land glow. From a distance, I saw Thomas standing by the fence, staring at the mountains. He heard the car and turned. Something like regret flickered in his eyes. But I did not stop. I drove into the garage and locked the door, because I had finally learned his regret would not save me. Only I could save myself. That night, I ate a bowl of hot soup and sat alone on the porch, looking up at the Wyoming sky scattered with stars. For the first time in days, I felt a quiet peace returning. Not because my family was whole again. It was already broken. But because I had chosen my path, to stand up, to protect myself, to reclaim my dignity. In that silence, I heard George's voice drift through the air like wind. "Well done, Martha." I smiled faintly. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin, but I was no longer afraid. The morning after I submitted all the paperwork to the Sheridan County Court, I felt as if two people were living inside me at once. One was the 72-year-old woman with trembling hands, aching back, and a heart still bruised by betrayal. The other was the version of myself George always believed in, standing straight, chin lifted, unwilling to let anyone strip away what I spent a lifetime building. The court scheduled my psychological evaluation for Friday morning. Exactly 2 days before the deadline, Victoria planned to request a psychiatric hold. Quick as lightning, Jackson Myers truly was an excellent attorney. I knew the battle had only just begun. Near noon, Thomas returned to the main house. He knocked softly, as if afraid to anger me. "Mom, are you in there?" I was folding documents and froze mid-motion. Part of me wanted to open the door fully, to embrace the son I once loved more than myself. But the other part, the one that had awakened, stopped me. I opened the door only halfway. "What is it?" Thomas looked at me with tired, uncertain eyes. "Mom, I know I hurt you. I just wanted to say, I am sorry." I held his gaze for a few seconds. "Sorry for last night?" I asked. "For everything," he said, his voice shaking. "I do not know what Victoria told you, but I do not want you to be in pain." I studied his eyes. He could not lie to me. Thomas was torn between his mother and the shadow of his wife. But I knew too well that his weakness was the very reason I was pushed into this situation. "Love does not always save someone, Thomas," I said. "Sometimes it blinds them. You need to open your own eyes." "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." He swallowed, staring at his dust-covered boots. He tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "Thomas, I am setting boundaries to protect myself. You cannot stand on both sides. Either you end this plan with Victoria, or you let me defend myself against the two of you." He looked at me for a long moment, then let his hand fall. "Mom, I need time." "The court reviews my competence in 3 days," I said. "Where you choose to stand is up to you." I closed the door, not harshly, but firmly. At my age, I no longer had the strength to beg someone who had already chosen to turn away. That afternoon, as I was leading the cows back into the barn, a sleek black SUV sped through the gate, throwing dirt into the air. I recognized it instantly. Victoria. She slammed the door so hard the wind tossed her blonde ponytail. "Martha, what the hell do you think you are doing?" I adjusted my knit cap. "I am not sure what you mean." She stepped closer, her eyes sharp as blades. "The competency petition. Filing it to the court. What game are you trying to play?" "Game," I repeated. "This is not a game. This is my right. I am competent, and I want the law to affirm that." Victoria scoffed. "The law? You think anyone is going to believe an old woman hidden away on a farm over her own son?" I stepped closer. "You think everything in this world can be staged with a few dramatic sighs and a sad story? No, Victoria. I have lived here 52 years. I work with the county, the bank, the neighbors, the dairy association. Everyone knows I am more clear-headed than the entire herd." I held her gaze. "And another thing. I filed for protection against elder coercion. If you keep interfering in my life, The police will come speak to you." Victoria clenched her fists so tightly her hands shook. "You are ruining everything. Thomas is the rightful heir." "I have George's will. It says otherwise." Victoria laughed, disbelieving. "Show me." "You truly think I am foolish enough to hand it over so you can tear it up?" Her expression twisted for a second. Then she stepped close enough that her breath felt like winter wind on my face. "You have no idea who you are up against." I smiled, a small, cold smile sharper than anything she had said. "You are the one who has no idea. I will take this farm, sooner or later. You are too old to fight us. Try." She spun around, slammed her door so hard it echoed across the barn, and sped off. I stood in the yard as the wind lashed against me. But inside, I was still, still as frozen winter earth. No more shaking, no more fear. I had crossed into the realm of reason, not the wounded mother, but the woman reclaiming her life. The competency evaluation arrived sooner than I expected. The courthouse in Sheridan was small but solemn. Wooden walls, long benches, and the old scent of paper and varnish reminded me of Christmas services when I was young. Jackson stood beside me and rested a hand on my shoulder. "Just answer honestly. You are strong, clear-minded, more so than many younger people I see." I inhaled deeply. "George would be proud," he added. I nodded. When I entered the evaluation room, the psychological examiner greeted me without judgment. We talked for nearly an hour about my life, about running the farm, about my family, about what I remembered, and what I sometimes forgot. I was no genius. I forgot small things. I did not recall exact dates on some invoices. But I was lucid. I knew the year. I knew where I stood. I knew why I was there. And most importantly, I knew exactly what was being done to me. At the end, the examiner closed her file and smiled. "Mrs. Martha, you are more competent than I expected. Congratulations." My heart dropped, light as the last leaf of fall. 3 days later, a temporary ruling was delivered to my door. The court affirms that Mrs. Martha possesses full mental competence and retains complete authority over her property and personal decisions. My hands trembled as I held the paper, not from fear, but from relief. Justice had not come quickly, but it had come in time. I dialed Thomas. He answered after 2 rings. "Mom." "Thomas," I said calmly, "the court has affirmed my competence. If you and Victoria attempt to file any psychiatric hold, it will constitute elder abuse, a criminal offense. I will not forgive it." Silence. Then Thomas spoke, voice breaking. "Mom, I'm sorry. I did not know Victoria would push things this far. I just thought—" "You thought I was weak," I said. "You thought I was easy to influence, but you forgot who I am, Thomas. I am not a woman who stood behind your father's shadow." More silence. Then softly, like a child, I want to come home." "Good, but not today," I said firmly. "Today, I need peace. I need to rebuild my life without interruptions." "I understand." I ended the call. That afternoon, I walked out into the fields to cut hay. The Wyoming wind blew hard, but I stood firm. My cows still ate, still breathed, still waited for me, as they had for 50 years. And in that moment, I realized justice did not come only from the court. It came from choosing to stand up, from choosing to defend my dignity, from refusing to let anyone erase my life with a few signatures. Night fell, bringing a deep chill. I lit the fireplace, brewed peppermint tea, and watched the flames dance. I had won justice for myself, not through tears, not through begging, but with the strength of someone pushed to the edge who still chose to stand tall. Tomorrow, I did not know what Victoria would do, but it no longer mattered, because I had reclaimed the one thing that mattered most: my sovereignty, my dignity, and my peace. The morning the court delivered its decision affirming that I was fully competent, I thought it would be the greatest release of my life. But vindication, I learned, is only the first step. What came after? Quiet, steady, and deeper than anything before, was the return of compassion for myself. Not pity, not regret, but the kind of care I had always reserved for others and never once offered to my own heart. 3 days later, Thomas came back to the farm, not in the black pickup Victoria usually drove, but in the old Ford he used in college. Its blue paint faded to silver under the sun. I was forking hay for the cows when I heard the truck door close. Turning around, I saw Thomas standing at the fence, hands in his pockets, looking older by several years in just a few days. "Mom," I set the pitchfork down. "What are you here for?" He swallowed hard, as if preparing himself to say something difficult. "Mom, I left Victoria." A short sentence, but it thundered across the field. I stared at my son for a long moment. Part of me wanted to believe him instantly, to run to him, to hold the child I once loved more than my own life. But another part, the part torn raw by everything he had allowed to happen, stood cautious, like an old, wounded animal. "Left her?" I asked. "Why?" Thomas rested his arms on the fence and lowered his head. "Because I finally saw everything. Victoria never wanted to care for you. She wanted this farm. I heard her on the phone with a real estate broker. She scheduled an appraisal. You were right." His voice cracked. "I was wrong. So wrong." I looked away toward the field, the things that had always been constant in my life: the land, the sky, the cows, the wind, had become the only things I could trust. "I am sorry, Mom," he said, voice trembling. "I am really sorry." And in that moment, I understood something. I did not need anyone's apology in order to be free, but I needed that apology so my heart would not close forever. I sighed and stepped closer. "Thomas, I do not hate you. I am disappointed. I am hurt. I know. But apologies are not redemption." I met his eyes. "Redemption is action." He nodded. "I will do whatever you want." "Good. Then start by letting me live my own life. Do not decide for me. Do not judge me because someone whispers something in your ear." Thomas lowered his gaze. "I promise." "And one more thing," I said slowly. "Let the law handle Victoria. You will not interfere." He looked up. "I will let everything take its proper course. For the first time in months, I felt like I was speaking to the son I raised, rather than the shadow Victoria shaped. That afternoon, Ruth, my elderly neighbor, drove over with a loaf of bread and a tight hug. "Martha, I know everything now. The whole town knows. Everyone is on your side," she said. I laughed, a real laugh this time. "The whole town?" I asked. "Of course. You think people in Sheridan go through life without noticing things? Everyone sees you work hard every day. Everyone sees the injustice." She squeezed my hand. "Martha, you are not alone." Just 4 words, but enough to bring tears to my eyes. I did not need rescuing. I only needed to know I had not been abandoned by the world. Ruth continued. "The day after tomorrow, the Farm Council meets. I asked them to put your name on the list for legal support for asset abuse. It is a new program in Wyoming." I blinked. I never expected anything like that." "Martha," she said, gripping my shoulder, "do not forget how many people you have helped in this community over the decades. Now, it is our turn to hold you up." My chest tightened, as if a heavy stone was finally being lifted. That evening, Thomas asked to join me for dinner. I hesitated, but I felt it was time for something to soften. It was the first meal we had shared in months. He ate slowly, as if trying to swallow guilt along with food. I did not scold him. I simply watched my son, a man who had lost himself, trying to find his way back. Halfway through the meal, he said, "Mom, I talked to my lawyer. I signed separation papers." I stopped my spoon. "You are sure?" "I am sure," he said firmly. "You were right. Love is not blindly following someone else." Victoria turned me into someone I did not recognize. I studied him. "You overcame it, Thomas," I whispered. "That is true redemption." He broke down. Not a weak man's tears, but the tears of a child stepping out of darkness. I moved beside him and rested my hand on his back. "We will be all right, but you need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, not leaning on me and not leaning on any woman." He nodded hard. "Can you teach me again, Mom?" I smiled. "Yes, but you must accept one thing. I am no longer the place you lean on. I am the place you learn to be strong." That weekend, the news spread across Sheridan. Victoria had left Wyoming in the middle of the night, after receiving notice of an investigation into elder abuse and attempted asset seizure. No one knew where she went. No one cared. Neither did I. Because, for the first time in months, I felt free. Not free from Victoria, but free from the feeling of being unseen, doubted, dismissed. I stood in my field, the land George and I had shaped with sweat and tears, and I knew I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, and more than that, I was the owner of my own life again. Redemption did not come through Thomas, not through the community, not through the court's ruling. It came from within, when I finally believed I deserved peace. That night, I opened my bedroom window and let the prairie wind rush in. The smell of grass, dirt, and dairy surrounded me, embracing me like George once did. I closed my eyes. I had walked through darkness. I had risen from humiliation, pain, and disappointment. I had reclaimed my dignity. And now, I was stepping into a new chapter of my life. Spring arrives late in Wyoming. The sky still carries the cutting cold of winter, But beneath the earth, the first shoots of grass have begun to stir. I stepped onto the porch that morning with a cup of hot peppermint tea in my hands and thought back on the months I once believed I would never escape. I had thought I would grow old in fear, wounded forever by the betrayal of the people I loved most. But when pain finally hits the very bottom, everything that comes after grows strangely clear. 2 weeks after Victoria disappeared, the court formally dismissed every petition she had filed for a forced psychiatric hold. Not only that, they opened an investigation into elder abuse. Even though Victoria vanished like a poisonous wind, the law left her traces behind on paper. When I received the notice, I did not cheer or feel triumphant. I simply inhaled deeply, like someone who had just broken the surface after being underwater for too long. I survived. I was vindicated. I proved to the world that I was not insane, not confused, not an easy target. I was Martha of Wyoming, Martha of the wind, the dairy cows, the land, the woman George had believed in from the very first day. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch watching the cows graze on the hillside, Thomas approached. He did not walk up right away. He stayed a few yards back, as if afraid to wound me again. "Mom," he said softly. I nodded. "Can I sit here?" "Yes." He pulled over the old wooden chair, set it down, and sat. For a long time, we simply watched the fields. No words. But it was not the silence of distance. It was the silence of healing. At last, Thomas drew a breath. "I met with my attorney this morning. I signed the divorce papers." I did not look at him. I only asked, "Are you sad?" "Sad," he admitted, but also relieved. When I was with Victoria, I wasn't me anymore. I was just her shadow. I didn't even recognize who I had become. I set my cup down. "You hurt me deeply, Thomas." "I know," he said, voice tight, "and I want to make it right." "No one can fix the past," I said. "You can only fix the present and the future." He turned toward me. "So, will you let me try?" "Yes," I said, "but not the way you think. Not by doing something grand. By standing on your own feet. By living decently. By becoming the man your father and I raised." "Mom, I promise." I placed my hand on his. For the first time in so long, I felt again the sensation of holding the same small hand that once reached for me in the fields. Thomas had come back, not through apology, but through the journey he walked alone to find himself again. The next day, I received a letter from the Sheridan County Farm Council. They invited me to join a new program, Independent Senior Farmers, a support system offering legal guidance and technical training for older farmers still working their land. They said I had become an inspiration after defending myself against an attempted asset seizure. I laughed when I read it. Me, the woman who had once been labeled mentally impaired, now held up as an example for others. I signed the registration form immediately. Summer arrived. Wyoming sky turned a blue so deep it looked newly painted. Wildflowers bloomed across the land. The cows' morning calls became a sound that made me smile when I woke. One morning, as I pushed a hay cart out of the shed, Thomas ran toward me. "Mom," he called. I stopped. "What is it?" I want to move back for a while. I want to help you on the farm, at least until everything is steady again. I looked at him for a long moment. Thomas, this is not a duty. You do not repay mistakes by becoming the farm's manager. It is not about repaying, he said. I want to. That simple sentence was the last piece I needed to finally breathe fully again. Because he was not acting out of guilt, but out of meaning. I nodded. Good. Then tomorrow I will teach you how to mix supplemental feed. He laughed, a real laugh, young and bright like when he was 16. At the end of summer, Sheridan held its annual agricultural fair. I brought fresh milk, cheese, and homemade pie to my booth. People came to congratulate me, not just for the court's ruling, but for surviving something no one believed a 72-year-old woman could endure. Ruth came and hugged me tightly. Martha, you're back. I smiled. I was never gone. I was just hidden for a while. On the last night of summer, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky red. The wind carried the scent of earth, grass, and freedom. I lifted my cup and whispered, George, do you see? I am all right. I am stronger than I thought. I imagined his voice, steady and warm, replying, I knew it, Martha. I knew you could do it. I closed my eyes. No more pain, no more fear, no more distance between me and the life I chose. I had walked through betrayal. I had risen from humiliation. I had fought back, claimed justice, and opened a path of redemption for myself and for my son. Now I was alive again, at an age when many believe change is no longer possible. I smiled, light as the breeze. My life did not end when someone tried to lock me away in a psychiatric hospital. It began again the moment I stood up and said, I deserve to live. And from that moment, I was reborn. In the most beautiful way, in a way no one, except myself, could have made possible. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments section.